The polished brass doors of the Riverside County Courthouse swung open with a muted thud as Corporal Marcus Lewis stepped through, each click of his highly shined dress blue shoes echoing across the marble floor. His uniform dress blues, coat pressed to a razor's edge, trousers creased in a perfect sharp line, felt heavier than usual, laden with the weight of every ribbon and service stripe meticulously sewn above his left breast pocket. The golden USMC collar devices caught the overhead lights in a steady glow, and his white belt buckle gleamed like a beacon. He was unmistakably a Marine, far from any battlefield. He paused in the central rotunda, his reflection cast in the broad windows lining the high-domed ceiling. Around him, civilians in dark suits and muted dresses whispered in hushed tones, their eyes drifting curiously toward the uniformed figure at the center of their attention. A pair of bailiffs, one with a deep voice that rumbled like distant thunder, nodded respectfully. Others seemed unsure whether to salute, offer a nod, or simply stand aside. Marcus inhaled slowly, the faint scent of polish and starched cotton mingling with the courthouse's distinct aroma of old wood and paper. This was no optional courtesy visit. Today, he would testify on behalf of a fellow Marine, Private First Class Jamie Torres, whose fate now rested in the hands of a civilian jury. As he approached the defense table, Marcus felt the courtroom's hush deepen. Rich mahogany paneling rose behind him, broken only by the soaring American flag and the state seal carved above the judge's bench. Spectators filled the rows of seats, family members, reporters clutching notepads, and curious onlookers drawn by the unusual sight of a Marine in full regalia. The stenographer's fingers danced over her machine in anticipation. Marcus's heart beat in steady military cadence, each thump a reminder of the oath he'd taken on Paris Island, to support and defend the Constitution, in war and peace alike. He settled into the chair behind the defense table, his back impossibly straight, posture honed by years of drill and ceremony. The bailiff to his right tapped the microphone. "Corporal Lewis," she intoned, "please state your full name and rank for the record." His voice, when it came, was calm and measured. "Marcus D. Lewis, Corporal, United States Marine Corps." His words filled the hushed chamber like a quietly rolling tide. He saw the judge's eyes lift from her paperwork, curiosity mingled with stern expectation. From the gallery, murmurs rippled, some approving, some skeptical. Yet Marcus felt only clarity. In this room, far from the salt-battered decks of his ship or the dusty roads of distant deployments, he carried with him the same unwavering commitment to serve honorably, to speak truth, and to ensure that justice, civilian or military, was delivered without prejudice. The judge rapped her gavel once. Marcus drew in another breath, squared his shoulders, and prepared to stand on oath, ready to bring the discipline of the Corps into this courtroom of solemn authority. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom as Judge Eleanor Harper rapped her gavel, calling the proceedings to order. The air, heavy with polished wood and hushed expectation, seemed to press in on Corporal Marcus Lewis in his dress blues. He rose from his seat beside Private Torres's attorney, boots clicking sharply on the oak floor. Every eye, jurors, spectators, even the reporters perched in the gallery, turned toward him. Judge Harper, her silver hair pinned neatly beneath her black velvet bonnet, leaned forward on the bench. Her dark robes pooled around her like a river of authority. She regarded Marcus through wire-rimmed glasses, expression inscrutable. "Corporal Lewis," she began, voice calm but firm, "it is highly unusual to see a service member in full military uniform in a civilian court. Our protocols generally require civilian attire once off base. I must ask you, why are you here in your dress blues today?" A hush fell. Marcus felt the weight of every ribbon on his chest, every stripe on his sleeve, as though they collectively bore the burden of his answer. He inhaled, recalling the countless early mornings, and the oath he'd repeated beneath Paris Island's sun, each word etched in iron. He lifted his chin, voice steady and clear. "Your Honor," he replied, "I stand before you in my uniform because this uniform represents a commitment, not just to my country in time of war, but to the ideals enshrined in our Constitution every day. The same oath that guides my steps on foreign soil compels me to support and defend your right to a fair trial. A murmur of surprise swept through the jury box. Judge Harper's brow arched in intrigue. Marcus continued, his eyes never wavering from the judge's. I swore to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Today, I serve justice, not as a soldier on a battlefield, but as a citizen ensuring that one of our own Marines receives the impartial consideration he deserves. My uniform is a symbol of that service, of the discipline and accountability I bring to this courtroom. Silence stretched as Judge Harper absorbed his words. The gavel rested idle in her hand. After a long moment, she inclined her head. Corporal Lewis, she said quietly, your dedication both to military duty and to the rule of law is commendable. I withdraw my concern over your attire. Proceed with your testimony. The courtroom exhaled collectively, and Marcus allowed himself a brief, respectful nod before seating himself again, his uniform integrity now intertwined with the very justice he had come to uphold. As the bailiff placed the Bible before him, Corporal Marcus Lewis closed his eyes for a moment and felt the weight of his service settle over his shoulders like a cloak. The courtroom's hush, the soft scratch of pens and notepads, the low murmur of the jury's breathing, was a far cry from the roar of rifle fire or the clanging bells of reveille at Paris Island. Yet, in that silence, Marcus heard the echo of an oath he had sworn long ago, one that transcended uniforms and battlefields. He remembered stepping onto the yellow footprints as a raw recruit, the Atlantic wind whipping salt spray into his face. Drill instructors barked orders he barely understood. Each cadence, left, right, forced his feet to move before his mind could question. He endured endless hours of hurry up and wait, end of the bridge falls, and punctilious inspections of shirt creases and shoe shine. Every instant was a lesson. That discipline was more than a habit, that obedience could forge unity stronger than steel, and that a Marine's honor was measured in actions, not words. The memory shifted to the Oath Day ceremony, the moment he placed his hand on that same Constitution he would later defend in this very courtroom. He could still taste the tang of salt on his lips as he spoke. I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. The amphitheater of white and blue uniforms before him, the chorus of voices rising in unison, and the solemn nod of the presiding officer had marked his irrevocable commitment, not simply to obey orders, but to safeguard the principles that bind a democracy. Later, overseas in the dusty heat of Helmand Province, Marcus stood watch beneath a relentless sun. He recalled the night raids and the whispered prayers before dawn patrols. The weight of his rifle matched only by the weight of responsibility for his fellow Marines' lives. When Private Torres had fallen wounded, Marcus's resolve had steeled. No comrade would be left behind, no survivor forced to bear the burden of betrayal by inaction. That same fierce loyalty now stirred in his chest as he took the stand. Now, standing in his dress blues, every ribbon and stripe testifying to sacrifice and service, Marcus felt the oath breathe life within him. He inhaled slowly, chest rising beneath the starched coat, and opened his eyes. In this quiet courtroom, he was once again pledging to defend the Constitution, and with it, the right of a fellow Marine to a fair and impartial trial. The oath that had sustained him through boot camp, combat, and countless deployments would guide his testimony, reminding all who watch that duty and justice are inseparable, whether on distant sands or in the halls of civil law. Corporal Marcus Lewis rose again when the bailiff called his name, his polished dress blues reflecting the courtroom's quiet intensity. He crossed the floor with measured steps, heels clicking in precise cadence on gleaming oak, and settled into the witness box. The leather of the seat felt firm beneath him, but he kept his posture perfectly erect, shoulders squared, chin level, embodying every ounce of Marine discipline ingrained through months of drill and ceremony. The defense attorney, a tall woman in a charcoal suit with kind eyes, approached the rail. She offered Marcus a faint nod before beginning. Corporal Lewis, please tell the court How you know Private First Class Jamie Torres. Marcus inhaled steadily, the memory of their shared trials in boot camp surfacing calmly in his mind. Your Honor, I met Private First Class Torres at Paris Island during recruit training. We were in the same platoon, Echo 6. We marched the same lines, learned our rifle drills side by side, and I watched him save lives in combat. He risked everything to pull me out of an ambush in Helmand Province. He paused, allowing the jurors to absorb their connection. The prosecutor's pen stilled on her notepad. Marcus continued in a measured cadence. During the firefight, he worked under heavy fire to drag me to cover, applied a tourniquet, and coordinated our medevac. Without him, I would not be here. The courtroom air felt electric as he described the moment the medevac helicopter arrived, the thump of its rotors, a lifeline cutting through the desert dawn. The attorney guided him through details: his own rank, his responsibilities as Torres's squad leader, the bond forged by shared danger. Marcus handled each question with calm precision, referencing timelines, field reports, and after-action debriefs. His voice never wavered, yet carried the quiet power of someone who had borne witness to courage under fire. Then came the crucial testimony. The prosecutor, intent on challenging the defense, asked, "Corporal, would you characterize military action as analogous to civilian law? How can actions taken on a battlefield translate to the standards of our courts here today?" Marcus felt the weight of every eye upon him, but his answer was unwavering. "Sir, the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the laws of armed conflict hold us to strict standards. We operate under rules of engagement. We are accountable for every shot fired. When I wear this uniform, I answer to that same standard of accountability and honor, whether under enemy fire or before this jury." His words resonated so strongly that a tremor rippled through the courtroom. He concluded by addressing the jurors directly. "Justice demands evidence, integrity, and impartiality. In combat or in civilian courts, I am the same Marine, bound by oath to uphold the rule of law. I stand here not for battle, but to ensure that Private Torres receives the same fairness and protection I would expect for myself." As he returned to his seat at defense counsel's table, Marcus felt the solid weight of his uniform more than ever. A banner of duty he had carried from training grounds to war zones to this very courtroom. The judge's steady gaze confirmed that his testimony had bridged the divide between military service and civilian justice, leaving no doubt that the oath he bore was one and the same on both fronts. The courtroom crackled with tension as Prosecutor Linda Bennett rose, her sharp heels clicking on the polished oak floor. She fixed Corporal Marcus Lewis with a steely gaze. "Corporal," she began, voice cool, "you've described battlefield actions under fire, shooting at enemy combatants who actively seek to kill you. Yet here, you ask this jury to judge a man who allegedly struck a fellow Marine in anger. Isn't that civilian violence, fundamentally different from lawful conduct in war?" Every eye in the room swung to Marcus. He stood slowly, the starched collar of his dress blues brushing the back of his neck. Light from the tall windows glinted off his ribbons and stripes. He inhaled deliberately, recalling the codified rules that governed every engagement overseas. Rule 1. Distinguish combatants from non-combatants. Rule 4. Proportionality in the use of force. His voice when he spoke was calm and resonant. "Ma'am, the laws of armed conflict and the Uniform Code of Military Justice hold every Marine accountable for lawful use of force, no less strict than civilian law. In Kandahar, I answered for every round fired. Here, I answer for every word spoken." Bennett pressed on. "But isn't it true that in combat, the goal is to suppress and eliminate threats, not to protect rights?" Her tone implied that a warrior's mindset was incompatible with courtroom fairness. A murmur rippled through the jury box. Marcus met her eyes without flinching. "Sir," he corrected, "my mission has always been to protect lives, first of civilians, then of comrades. When I served as squad leader, I enforced discipline under threat of court-martial. I learned that lethal force demands the highest accountability. whether in a foxhole or a courtroom like this. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Jurors leaned forward. Even the judge's stern features softened. Prosecutor Bennett opened her notebook, searching for a follow-up, but her pen hovered. Marcus returned to his seat, posture unwavering. The uniform on his back now unmistakably a banner of both martial valor and sworn fidelity to justice. A hush settled over the courtroom as Prosecutor Bennett sank back into her chair, the echo of Marcus's final words still vibrating through the polished oak panels. Judge Eleanor Harper sat motionless behind her bench, eyelids lowered as if weighing an unspoken verdict in the quiet between testimony and judgment. Finally, she lifted her gaze, silver hair framing a face softened by reflection. "Corporal Lewis," Judge Harper began, her voice measured but warm, "your testimony has reminded us all why the uniform matters as much in a courtroom as it does on the battlefield." She folded her hands atop the desk, the gavel resting idle beside a neatly stacked pile of case files. Marcus met her eyes, standing at rigid attention as though awaiting formal command. "I must apologize," the judge continued, leaning forward so that the ornate nameplate, "The Honorable Eleanor Harper," caught the light. "When I questioned your attire, I failed to recognize that your dress blues symbolize more than rank. They represent an oath to justice that transcends any setting." She tapped the bench with the gavel, a gentle rap that summoned both order and newfound respect. "Effective immediately, I withdraw the courtroom's informal prohibition on military uniforms. Let it be known that, in my court, service and citizenship stand united." A soft murmur of approval swept through the jury box and gallery. Reporters exchanged surprised glances, their pens poised to capture this rare moment of judicial humility. Marcus allowed himself the smallest incline of his chin, a salute of gratitude rather than a gesture of defiance. Judge Harper pressed her palms against the bench. "Corporal, you may continue your testimony in uniform, and this court thanks you for embodying the very principles we seek to uphold." She returned her gavel to its spot, signaling a return to proceedings. As the court clerk prepared to move on to the next series of questions, the atmosphere had irrevocably shifted. The rigid divide between civilian and military had narrowed, replaced by mutual acknowledgement of shared duty. Marcus settled back into the witness box, every ribbon on his chest gleaming as a testament to service and integrity. Around him, jurors sat taller, deputies in the gallery stood a bit straighter, and civilians watched with a newfound appreciation. In that charged moment of reckoning, the judge had affirmed that honor and justice, whether under a burden of arms or the solemn responsibility of a gavel, are bound by the same unbreakable oath. The late afternoon sun slanted across the broad steps of the Riverside County Courthouse as Corporal Marcus Lewis stepped out in his dress blues, the hem of his trousers creasing crisply with every measured stride. A small gathering of supporters, civilians, Marines in service khakis, even Judge Harper herself, waited on the marble landing. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd as Private First Class Jamie Torres emerged beside him, unshackled and relieved, uniform sleeves rolled smartly but shoulders visibly lighter. Reporters jockeyed for position, cameras flashing, but the moment was quieter than any media spectacle. Marcus turned first to Torres, clasping his comrade's forearm in a firm, brotherly grip. "You did good, Marines do," he said, voice low but unwavering. Torres offered a grateful smile, eyes moist, as the two shared a nod that spoke of battles past and trials won, both on foreign soil and under the veil of civilian justice. Judge Harper descended the steps, her robes flowing behind her. She offered Marcus a crisp salute before extending her hand. "Corporal Lewis, you have reminded us that service and citizenship are one and the same," she said, voice warm. She turned to address the assembled crowd. "Let this day stand as proof that duty demands accountability wherever a uniform may appear." Her words drew respectful applause. Neighbors who had filled the benches earlier now approached with handshakes and thank yous. A mother pressed a small American flag into Marcus's hand. A young law student asked for his autograph on her notebook margin, where she'd scribbled, "Oaths beyond war." Even courthouse security officers unclipped their stances to offer nods of respect. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus and Torres lingered. On the final step, he paused, looking back up at the courthouse facade, its columns casting long shadows that spoke of centuries of law. He straightened his cap, took a deep breath, and tucked into his dress blue coat a folded sheet of paper. The written order lifting the uniform restriction in civilian court. It was a small token, but one that symbolized a larger victory. That a Marine's oath, to uphold justice, knows no boundaries of battlefield or bench. Together, they descended into the gathering dusk, their footprints echoing in cadence on the stone steps. The courthouse doors closed behind them with a muted finality, but in Marcus's heart, the oath he bore burned brighter than ever, an unbroken promise to defend the rule of law, on any soil, in any forum, for as long as his uniform remained his honor.